Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of What Has Changed Your Life. Today, my guest had an active lifestyle, and that was taken from her after she was hit by a drunk driver. After a year of working with doctors on traditional therapies and taking about 15 different medications, Serita was diagnosed with chronic pain and multiple illnesses. She was physically and emotionally at her wit's end, and she became exhausted with no viable options to help her deal with the pain. Serita decided to pave the way and sorry, I lost my note there. She decided to pave the way for her own health and take charge of her own health. Welcome to this episode of What Has Changed Your Life, Serita.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for bringing me on here. I appreciate it. And yes, it was definitely a sordid affair, nonetheless, as far as with what ended up happening with my car accident and basically everything that just followed from there.
That's awful. I've known way too many people that have been affected by drunk driving. Right. And it's just such a tragedy in this day and age that people can't get it through their minds that really, if you're going to drink, there's so many millions of different options you can do other than get behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the crazy part about it as well, too, because when my accident occurred, it was on a holiday. It was July 4th, 2016. Mm-hmm. And, it was basically, we were coming from a cookout and then, heading back home. And we were in an area where the speed limit was 25 and she was going at least 60. So, I mean, you can imagine the impact, not only on, my vehicle, but then also on my body as well, too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I really was a science experiment for close to a year, just basically going back and forth to all these different doctors and specialists. And no one could tell me what was going on with my body. And the majority of where the pain and everything was, coming from was like I was having pain in my right shoulder. I was going down my arm into my right hand. And then it started to go into my upper neck and back, and then it started to go throughout the rest of my joints and throughout the rest of my body. And
so did you have any physical, obviously the chronic pain, but were there bones that were broken? Were there physical injuries to you because of the accident?
Well, that's the thing. It actually took about close to 9 months before it finally was discovered through additional testing, because I was having a bunch of tests done. But I ended up having bone chip spurs going into my nerve in my right shoulder. And so that's what they were stating was the issue. And one thing about it is that prior to my accident, I actually was working out 6 or 7 days a week. So the orthopedic surgeon that I went to actually said, because of how much you actually were active prior to your accident, that actually helped you, because you should have really broken your shoulder. He's like, but because of your, how your body was already, kind of in that mode, it just ended up being the bone chip spurs that occurred. But even still, that was a lot going on, from that, where I was on an 8 or 9 on the pain scale on a daily basis.
That is intense. And imagine if you're watching 8 or 9 out of 10 every single day.
Right. For a year.
How do you even get up in the morning? That is terrible pain to have.
Absolutely. And I was, bedridden a lot of it as well, too. And I am a mom. So it's I have 3 kids as well. So, it's trying to take care of kids, at the same time. And they were used to their mom being that active parent. I was the one that I would go to the park. I'd be on, running around and doing all those things with them. And I was also a football mom at the time, where my son was a senior, was heading into being the senior year of his high school. And he was, on the football team. They went to state, all that stuff. And they were used to me, being the concession mom, doing all those, doing all those different things. And it's now I'm barely able to go ahead and do anything, for that matter, barely able to take care of myself.
Wow. And a year of going to doctors. And what were they saying to you? What were they saying? You have to live with this? Is that what their answer was?
That was starting to become the trend. Well, there was a time where I actually ended up having to fire 3 doctors during my journey, where I had one doctor that looked at me and said that you don't look like you're in pain. And I looked at him and I'm like, well,
really?
The person is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
I'm curious because, and I told him, I said, it took me 2 hours to get ready for this 10-minute appointment. Like, you don't understand, like, how, I have to constantly, like, I have to take breaks to get ready when normally before my accident, it might have took me 20 minutes, a half an hour, to get ready. Where now it's taking me, quadruple the time, to be able to go ahead and get ready to be here. And he couldn't respond because he actually was surprised that I said something back to him.
Good for you.
He just thought that, I guess he was comfortable saying those things to people. And I had to let him know, I'm not that one for you to think that I'm going to sit here and take that. So that was one that I had to fire. Another one I had went to said to me, and it was a man, he said, oh, I noticed with your middle child, you had your middle child natural childbirth and you were fine. You were up walking around, everything just fine. I'm not understanding how you're in so much pain right now. And I looked at him and I said, first of all, I said, you're a man, so you would never know what it's like to have a menstrual cramp, let alone to give birth to a child.
Yes.
Not only that, though, too, I said, we are comparing apples to oranges. I
said,
you are looking at childbirth. You know what the end result is going to be. You're going to have a child and it's going to stop. The pain stops. Versus with this, I said, this is constant. This is not stopping. I'm like, you guys are constantly giving me medication to take. And it might, take the edge off for like a moment, but then it jumps right back up again. So I said, that's not, can't compare those two things.
No.
So of course, fired him. Because I'm like, I'm not going to be able to work with you if this is the way that you're, looking at pain, when it comes to me. And then,
well, I have to tell you, I am so relieved to hear you say that you stood up for yourself, because I think the biggest thing, a lot of women especially, they get dismissed in medicine. And that I'm so proud that you actually did that, because most women would be like, oh, okay. And they wouldn't even challenge it.
Right. Yeah.
The doctor said so. So for you to say that you said something to him, I applaud you, because more women need to do that. More women need to advocate for themselves and not accept the answer if it doesn't feel right.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, I knew that there was something, there's something wrong. I'm like, there's clearly something wrong. I'm like, you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be the person to help me. So it's like, I'm not going to go ahead and continue with this conversation because it's pointless. It's like, I'm not even going to waste my time.
Absolutely. Right. If you're going to sit there and demean me, I'm telling you how I feel. And you're comparing my uterus.
Right. Which is
childbirth.
Right. Which is down here. Pain is up here. We're not talking about down here. Like I was like, this is not, the correlation here is not working.
Doesn't even make sense.
Not one bit. And then even the last one that I had went to as well actually said to me that it was in my head, that there's no way that I could be at an 8 or 9 on the pain scale and still be able to walk around and still actually have came to this appointment. Like, wow. Saying to me, you should be in the ER if you're in that much pain. And I said to him, I'm like, well, what is the ER going to do that you guys
Right.
Like,
why waste your time and money? Because I know you're in the States.
Yeah.
So when you go to the ER or any appointment, that's money. That's costing you.
Yeah. My insurance is going to look at me like, you have all these doctors. Why are you going to the ER when you have different specialists and things that you're going to?
Right.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I can't believe that. That line alone infuriates me when doctors are like, it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Really? Because it doesn't feel like it's in my head. And how demeaning is that?
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Right? Oh. So after that, what did you end up doing?
Well, I did eventually end up seeing an orthopedic surgeon. And that's the one that actually went through and was like, let's go ahead and do some more tests. Because at that point, I had seen basically everyone under the sun. I went to chiropractors, physical therapy, graduated out of that twice. Like I did everything that I was basically being told to do. And like I said, nothing was working. And so he did another MRI and CT. And that's when he discovered that I had the bone chip spurs going into my nerve in my right shoulder. And so he said to me, okay, you're going to have surgery. However, I'm backed up, so it's going to probably be 6 months, before you can go ahead and have the surgery. So I said, fine, just sign me up or whatever. Ended up calling my mom because I live in Wisconsin. My parents live in Florida. And so I called my mom because she was actually a retired orthopedic nurse. So for me to, ask like, hey, should I really be doing this or not? Because I'm like, I don't want to have surgery. That was my bottom line. But she was like, no, you have to. Don't worry about it, though. I'll come up and take care of you, while you're going through the process. You'll be fine. And so
Mhm.
my surgery did actually get bumped up. So it got bumped up to 4 months instead of 6. But unfortunately, 3 weeks prior to my surgery, my mother fell ill.
Oh,
And
no.
went down to Florida to be with her. And unfortunately, about 3 days later, she transitioned. So,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
yes, and I'm an only child, and my parents had just had their 54th wedding anniversary the week prior. So
Aw.
my dad basically just went into shock. So I had to do everything. So I like planned the funeral, did all the stuff I had to do. Came back up
Mm.
here, got my kids, brought them down there, did everything, came back up, had the surgery. And then after I had the surgery, I actually lost the motor functions in my right hand, which is something that only happens in like maybe 3% of people. So I got
Oh,
hit by the
man.
3%.
Yes.
Go back through physical therapy again and relearn how to write, brush my teeth, comb my hair, basically all the things that you take for granted. I had to go ahead and relearn. And
Oh.
after, even doing all that, now
Mhm.
I'm getting angry. I'm getting frustrated. Then on top of that too, I started to, suffer from depression
Well,
and
you just lost your
right.
mom.
And I was just gonna say, and then also I started having suicidal thoughts as well too,
Oh,
because I'm like, I lost my best friend. That's the one person I
yeah.
could talk to every single day at 10
Mm.
a.m. right on the dot, regardless of what was
Mm.
going on. And so
Wow.
I'm just like, going through the motions, going through all these things. And like I said, it's not getting better. That, it did kind of, drop the pain down a little bit where I was maybe at like a 6, 7, but
Right.
it's still like, still there, still a constant, it's still not letting up. And so was, basically going through that. And I eventually ended up seeing a doctor that basically said to me,
Mhm.
go ahead and just start getting your paperwork and everything together because your son is going to be your caregiver. And I'm like, no,
Ooh.
he is not.
Whoa.
I'm like,
That is that's heavy.
yes.
That's very heavy. I mean, how old would your son be? I'm thinking in my
He was
mind, he wouldn't
just
be
was
that
turning
old.
18. He was just about to turn 18, and he was a
Wow.
senior in high school. And I'm like, no, he's just got accepted to college. He has he's going for football and everything. I'm like, no, this is not how things are going to be. And so,
So
oh, go
they
ahead.
were expecting you to become completely incapacitated?
At that point, because I was already bedridden the majority of the time because of how much pain I was in. And so they're saying
Wow.
because you're not, they're looking at everything, they're like, you're not getting any better. So they're like, if anything, you're actually starting to get worse. And at that point, I was already on about 8 medications on a daily
Mhm.
basis at that time.
Mhm.
And so they also then put me into pain management protocol as well too. And with the pain management protocol, it's not all bad, but the one thing with it is that it did actually put me on an additional 7 medications. So that's how I
Mhm.
got to be on the 15 medications total. And then I
Mhm.
also finally started to get some diagnosis. So I was actually diagnosed with 5 different things. I was
Okay.
diagnosed with fibromyalgia,
Mhm.
myofascial pain syndrome,
'Kay.
degenerative disc disease in my neck,
Mhm.
nerve damage, and chronic migraines. So
Mm.
they're saying that that's the reason why I was on all the medications was basically because of the symptoms that I was receiving from those diagnoses. And
That's a lot of medication.
yes, it is.
Like, that's a huge amount of medication. I almost feel like, you take one medication for one thing, but then you gotta take this medication to help
Yep,
combat the side effects of this medication. So you're gonna need to take this medication to deal with this medication, but that medication needs to deal with this medication, and then this medication.
absolutely.
So, and then you start doing the circle,
Yep.
the circle of all these different things to combat
Mhm.
each other, and still nothing was happening.
Absolutely. And I even had one particular situation too where I went to the pharmacist because they were actually getting ready to put me on something additional. And I went to the pharmacy to pick up my prescription. And at that point, I was on first name basis with the pharmacist. So his name is Chuck.
Yeah.
So I was going to him, I'm like,
Hi,
hey,
Chuck.
Chuck,
Shout
how are
out
you
to Chuck.
doing? And everything. And he looked at me, he said, well, I can't fill your prescription. And I'm like, oh, was there something wrong with my insurance or whatever? I said, what is it? And he's like, no, he's like, if I fill this, you'll die. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, the drug interaction. Because me being on so many different medications, he was like,
Yeah.
that's the side effect. He's like, I can't do this. And I'm like, yeah, no. I'm like, well, first of all, thank you for doing your job. because as
Thank
you
you
know,
for doing the job check.
so thank you. But I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I can't continue, on this path. And honestly, it was really the combination of all those different things that then like a couple days, I want to say it probably might have either been the next day or the couple days after that, I had a mental breakdown. Like I just
Mm.
couldn't, handle it anymore where my son was driving, so I didn't have to take him to school, but my younger two were still in elementary school at the time. So I, was driving them to school. I dropped them off. I came home. I just started crying, praying,
Mm.
meditating, saying like, please, something has to give, something has to happen. I can't do this anymore. I'd be better
Yeah.
off not here. All those different thoughts are going through my mind. And all of a sudden, my phone beeps. I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's just a message, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, well, no, that's deeper than that. I'm just like, it's a message. Like, why
Mm.
aren't you researching any of the stuff that these doctors and specialists and things are telling you? Like, you research everything else. You research TVs, you like cars, and all
Yeah.
of that. It's like, but why aren't you researching what's pertaining for your body?
Right.
For you. And so I went into the rabbit hole. I just like started researching everything, trying to see, what I could do based off the different diagnoses. And I really just got to work. I was like, you know what?
Mhm.
I'm going to take over the science experiment now. At this point, I'm
Right.
like, you're not able to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. Like it almost came, it was like mission impossible, basically. Like, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do this and see what I can do. And so I started, looking at my nutrition, my
Mhm.
stress management, because honestly, I had none. I didn't even know what stress management was. I didn't know it existed. There was
It is a thing. It is a thing.
So believe it or not, people, it is a thing. And so I, started working on that. Also started working on getting sleep because honestly, I wasn't getting any rest. And that's one of the pieces that you need in order for your body to heal is to be
Need
able to
rest.
actually rest and to actually sleep. And then I
Absolutely.
also, started working on the mental healing as well. So as I mentioned,
Mhm.
being with the pain management protocol, I was able to go ahead and start seeing a psychologist, which she was amazing. And initially I was scared, just scared altogether to even go and see her because I felt at this
Mhm.
point that they're going to take my kids away. I thought they're going to say like, this lady's crazy. Like we don't know what's going on with her, so we're going to take her kids. And that was like my immediate thought. So
Right.
for the first appointment, I remember driving there. I get there, I'm a little early. I sit in the parking lot and I just start bawling. I'm just crying,
Mm.
and everything. And then I'm like, all right, it's almost time. So I clean up, put makeup on, everything, go inside, put the face on. And so I go in there and I'm talking to her, and I know she could tell that I just was like, just done. And so
Right.
she said to me, she's like, can I touch you? And I'm like, yeah. And so she
You're thinking, why? Why are you touching me?
or where you want to touch me, but
Yeah.
she took my hand and she looked at me and she said, "You're safe now. It's okay. Like you can
Oh.
talk. Nothing's gonna happen. We're not gonna take your kids away or anything like that. Like you've gone through a lot of trauma." And she's like,
Mhm.
"You have not had the opportunity to talk to anyone or say anything to anyone. So she's like, this is
Yeah.
your safe space to do so." And of course, as soon as she said that, waterworks, like everything. I'm
Yep.
just like, just like, oh,
Yep.
and I just like started going on. I was like, well, when I was 10, I was like, went to like all
Yeah.
these different things. And she was like, it's okay. And like, we actually ended up going over a little bit, on my appointment, but she was like, you needed to get all of that out.
Yes.
And now we can go ahead and move forward and, implement a plan and see how
Mhm.
we can go ahead and help you and, so that way you can heal. And so that was like the big thing,
Absolutely.
there. And then I also implemented movement back into my life as well too, because of course, as I mentioned, I was in so much pain. Even just, I was just basically doing the physical therapy and that was it. And by that point, I had already graduated out of it for a third time. So I just was like,
Right.
nothing's working. I just kind of like just stopped. And
Right.
so I put all those things together. And within 4 months, I was able to get off of all the medications that I was on and then also drop the 50 pounds that I had gained from being on all those medications and just, having that sedentary lifestyle as well.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. 4 months.
4 months.
4 months of working on
Me.
the trauma that you experienced
Mm-hmm.
and doing some movement in your life.
And nutrition as well too, and the stress management and finally getting some rest.
Wow. People underestimate how important all those things are. A
Mhm.
lot of times we take it for granted.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But when you're not sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, your body doesn't heal, but also lack of sleep, it does torture the mind,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And so to have all those pieces start falling into place where you actually get your life back,
Yes.
oh my goodness. Tell me about the day that you realized that that was what was happening and it was working.
I cried. I really
Mm,
just was like, okay. And also, too, I was like, all right, I am in control. I finally am back to me, back to my own intuition. I can actually, listen to what my body's actually telling me and,
mhm,
you know, follow what it's saying, to do as well, too, where it's like, I'm no longer just, staying on this regimental, okay, you have to take this particular pill every 2 hours, every 3 hours. I mean, I had it down to a science in my phone that actually Walgreens has an app that you can actually put in the times for your medication. So that way it sends
mhm,
reminders and everything. That's how
right.
much, because of so much stuff I was on, I had to use that just to be able to go ahead and monitor. And I got to that point where I wasn't doing that anymore. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much of a job it was in itself just to try to, take
Yeah.
medications and everything that I was on. And it's one of those things where, I don't guarantee that everyone is going to be able to get off of medications or different things like that. But I knew for
Mhm.
myself personally, that was not the life that was going to work for me because it was not helping my particular situation. And so that's like
No.
one of those bigger pieces that, even with me like working for working with my clients and stuff, for example, I always say to them, like, you know what, I am the one-off scenario. It's like I always say, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm that one-off, I'm that special case, where things were able to go ahead and I was able to do that. I said, but we'll go ahead and continue to work and see, what happens, based off the changes that you're making in your life. Just like with me making those different changes for my lifestyle,
Mhm.
everything it just started to fall off. I didn't
Right.
end up having to need those anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
That is a beautiful thing. And now you help people with chronic pain and you coach them on how to deal with the chronic pain.
Correct. So, yep, I basically, I empower those that are living with chronic pain and I help
Mhm.
them get back control of their body and lives using natural lifestyle alternatives. So, AKA no medications. And so,
Right.
just similar to like what I did for myself, I
Mhm.
basically do, individualized plans for them. So then they can go ahead and actually find out what actually works best for them. Because the thing when it comes to, chronic pain or any chronic conditions, it's not a
Right.
one size fits all solution. It's not a
No, it
pill,
isn't.
it's not one thing, it's like you got to look at the person as a whole and look at
Mhm.
everything. And unfortunately, a lot of the doctors and specialists, they don't have time to do that. They can see maybe
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes and that's
Mhm.
it. They don't get to dive in and get to know who you are as a person and then
Right.
go from there and see what they can do as far as you're helping out.
And the other thing too is with medicine, and I'm in medicine, I'm a registered nurse. I work in the acute care hospital here.
Yep.
So I'm very involved in medicine.
Mhm.
And the way that we're all trained is you already have the problem.
Yep.
And this is what we do to fix it. So each surgeon has, or each doctor has their specialty,
Yep.
right? So they don't look at the whole picture most
Mhm.
of the time, just based on what their job is.
Right.
Cardiac surgeon looks at the heart. Do you need to
Yep.
fix it or not? If you do, let's fix it, move on,
Right.
go forward.
Mhm.
But there's not that whole entire care that people need afterwards to make those lifestyle changes,
Right.
habits, eating, sleep, all the things we've talked about
Mhm.
in order for them to be successful.
Right.
Right? So same thing here is all the doctors have a different opinion on how things are supposed to go, yet nobody's talking to each other. And most physicians don't look at alternative therapies
Right.
because again, it's not what they're trained in,
Right.
right? But
Mhm.
there definitely is a place for both.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So if you have your physician and this is the plan, you can also do alternative therapies
Mhm.
as well at the same time. It's
Right.
not an and or, it can be a to
Absolutely.
get, right? So I think that's important to mention too.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing, I definitely work with other doctors and other specialists as well, too, whether it's, physical therapists, chiropractors, massage therapists, we basically try to work together and really end up
Mhm.
being a team, for our clients, even for myself, too. It's like I have my own team of people that, I work with as well to make sure that I'm, still together and able to do the things that I'm doing now. But it's
Right.
just, amazing just to kind of look at that and just see like, wow, when you kind of have that 30,000-foot view, that you can kind of take a step back and kind of look at everything. It's like, well, yes, you
Yes.
do need to look at a person holistically, look at the whole person. You can't just look at that one
Right.
piece. And I also
Yes.
too look at the emotional side of things as well. Because unfortunately, if you have a lot of traumas and things that you haven't processed, just as I was mentioning with my story, that
Mhm.
also manifests in your body as well and comes out as physical pain too.
Absolutely.
And so that's
Absolutely.
another piece that I work with my clients on as well too, where I'm like, okay, where is the pain, located in your body? Okay, well, based off of where it's at, let's look at the emotion that's also attached to that as well too, and be able to go ahead and
Yes.
look at that piece. So
I
that's
call that woundology.
yes, it is. I
You
call it.
know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. Like a sample, for like the upper back and neck, like if you have a lot
Yeah.
of burdens that you haven't released, that's where a lot of that can come into play. And so recognizing that, is a
Yeah.
big piece. Or if you have like a lot of hip pain, it could be that,
Mhm.
you're not able to basically move forward in life. And so because you're, stuck in where you're at and you're not moving forward, that's where the hip pain and things like that can come into play too. So I mean, it's a fascinating thing. And it's like, I'm a super nerd geek, whatever you want to call me. I love looking at all those different things, trying to figure it out and, working with my clients and, giving them journaling and things like that to work through and do. And,
Yep.
some of them also do like voice notes versus journaling too. Cause I know some guys are a little, affinitive to journaling because they kind of think it's a girl thing where I say, no, it's
Yes.
not. I'm like, it's not gender specific. It's a release, so,
Yes.
and then a lot of times too, what's funny with that is that then they'll start off doing voice notes and then they turn into journalers. So it's like, so they end up,
Mm.
kind of having the transition over to it because then they're like, oh, now I see what you're trying to get me to do. I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
once you're able to see that, then they can kind of like, basically putting your thoughts on paper and being able to go
Yes.
ahead and see all that makes a big difference too. And it's really all part of that healing process as well, to be able to go,
Yes.
truly just, go through it. But it's definitely something that it's not for the weak. And I always say, all the time with anyone that's coming to work with me, the first question I ask them is, do you believe that you can heal?
Mm.
Because the thing is like, if you don't believe that you can heal, I can't help you. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be able to do it. I'm like, that's that first piece. And once you're able to, establish that part, then we can go ahead and move forward and see what we can do as far as we're helping you out.
Right. The reality is too, if they're not ready, it doesn't matter what you say to them.
Absolutely.
You can only lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink.
Yep. I say that all the time. It's funny you say that.
Right?
It's true.
Yeah, it's so true. So it's that's such a powerful question to ask them right off the bat, because then it makes them pause and think, do I really want to go through? Because it's work.
Yeah.
Right? When you're working on your mind, body, and soul, it is work.
Yes.
And it's not for the faint of heart. So you have to be ready to heal.
Right.
Exactly. I love that question.
Yeah, and that's one of those pieces too, because they'll ask me, because I say to them, I'll tell them my story and I'll give them like a little more of a condensed version of it, but then I'll say, and they're like, okay, well, how long did it take you? And I say, well, it took me 4 months. Like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, I said, I went all in. Like, I was like, I'm not doing anything else but this. And I was out on, I was out on disability and everything at the time as well, too. So it's like, I had that opportunity. I had that time that I'm like, I'm going to dedicate to this because I want to get back to, where my life potentially, was at that time, which I know now that was also another part of grieving, because as I mentioned, yes, my mother had transitioned as well, but I also had to go through the grieving process of my old life and then look at what I wanted my new life to be. And so that was something, another, big piece that I say to my clients, because, you sometimes get stuck in that mindset of, I used to be able to run 20 miles and all these, like all these things that you used to be able to do. And well, yeah, but don't, put that much pressure on yourself to think that you're going to get back to that spot again. You got to give yourself grace and allow for things to, just kind of play themselves out, which can be very scary because it's like you're not used to your life being that way. And now you're like, I don't know what my life could look like. But then I also say too, guess what? You now have the opportunity to make your life look like whatever you want to look like.
Yes.
Either be, for some people that's a good thing. Some people give some more anxiety, but just like to be able to go ahead and kind of say like, yes, now I can actually design the life that I want to have.
Yeah. Because sometimes people want to stay in the past because they know what that is. They're familiar with that past. They're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Whereas the future is scary, as you said, unknown. They don't know how it's going to be. Am I going to be better? Am I not going to be like all these different things start going through their minds. So that part is scary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have somebody like you guiding them along as they go on that very difficult journey.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the first things I do too is I, have them go ahead and basically establish what I call anchors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something where it's usually, either it can be, physical, can be, basically going off your senses, just looking at all those and kind of seeing, like for me, for example, I have a tattoo on my arm that was like one of my anchors that I got for myself, right when I was starting, going through my transition of everything. My screensaver on my phone is my kids, so that way I can always, look at them, all the time as far as reminders, for myself as well too. Got a motivational playlist. That way, I can have like some music or something that I can go ahead and listen to if I'm getting to that point of, thinking that things aren't going to go the way that I want them to. But, at the end of the day, it's really just establishing, what's your why behind everything you're looking at doing. And as long as you know what the why is, that's what's really going to help you. But then the anchors are just basically assisting you with your why.
Exactly.
So
it brings you back to that reason. And the reason needs to be a real reason.
Right.
Right. And what do I mean by that? Well, if your why is very superficial,
like I want to lose weight, for example. And it's like, well, it's not really that I want to lose weight. What is it that's attached to the weight? Is it
right? What are you holding on to?
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly. And you need to explore that so that your why is deep enough so that you can stay with it and then use your anchors as you're going through the process, because it isn't going to be easy. Like, let's be honest, it's not going to be easy. There are going to be days where you're going to want to give up.
Yep.
The reality is you look at those anchors and they remind you of what that deep why is. Like, I want to live.
Yeah.
Is a deep why.
Right. Or being like, I want to be able to actually interact with my children again.
Yes.
The way that they remember me being able to. And even if I can't do the full force of what I was, to be able to at least go to the park with them and push them on the swing. Like that was like just a small thing like that. Like I don't got to run around with them or whatever, but it's like I just want to be able to push them on the swing. And of course, I ended up surpassing all those different things. And I'm like one of those type of people where if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it twice and make sure I take pictures and the video for you to show you that I was able to go ahead and do it. Because even like right now, I just started working with a trainer after my birthday this past November, because I said, you know what? I was, prior to my accident, I was working with the trainer right up into that week, literally like probably like a couple of days before. I was always working with the trainer. So I haven't since this point. And so I said to myself, I'm like, you know what? I need to get out of my own way and I need to remove that fear for myself. And as long as I'm working with someone that is, familiar with the different conditions I've been diagnosed with, that even though now at this point, I'm usually at like a 0 or 1 on the pain scale. So I mean, I'm pretty much, good, but it's like, I still want someone that understands that and will still kind of give me a little bit more grace, to understand that, hey, this is what I'm working through. And so I have an amazing trainer that I'm working with where she works with, chronic conditions and things. And she's been amazing. She's been really helpful. And so what we do is every time I work with her twice a week. And we document it on Instagram. So I always put it on my Instagram stories that people can go ahead and see it and show it. And a lot of times I'll comment and I'll say, hey, I was told I wasn't able to do this. So this is why you're seeing this. And it's just one of those things
that's powerful.
Motivation for other people. That's like, yes, I get it, but it's something that's possible.
Oh, and that's the biggest lesson is giving hope. You are hope for somebody who could be watching or listening to this. And in that exact spot that you were, and now you've given them some hope that it's possible to have life living with chronic pain.
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful gift that you just gave whoever's listening or whoever's watching.
Yes.
Right? How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Very good question. I am big on Instagram. So my Instagram is I am chronically resilient. So
I am chronically
resilient.
Oops.
And so that would
I'm
definitely.
going to put it up here on the screen so people can see and tell me if I did it all lowercase because I wasn't sure what it would look like on Instagram.
Yep, that is perfect. So yep, that is it.
Perfect.
So that'd be
Awesome.
one. And then the other
Okay.
place too is that they can also email me. And so
Mm-hmm.
my email is goalchasers2020.
Gold chasers.
Goal. Like
Oh,
as I,
goal.
yep. like I have to.
Gold is good too.
Yes, hey, that works.
Goal chasers
Yeah,
2020.
goalchasers2020 at gmail.com.
Email.
Because yeah, I'm actually in the process of doing rebranding. So I'm going to be having my website's actually going to be launching the end of next month, because I'm actually doing a whole rebrand. So that's why I don't want to give an email quite yet, even though not the website, because the website is going to be I'm chronically resilient, but it's not up yet. So I don't want to put people to the wrong.
Don't go there yet.
Yeah,
Soon.
Very soon.
So there's the email. And if anybody wants to get in touch and work with Serita, there you go. There's your two ways of doing it: Instagram and by email.
Correct.
I am chronically resilient on Instagram, and goalchasers2020 at gmail.com for those that are listening. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us tonight. And I know that this is going to help so many people. So many people. So thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you again, Tracy, for your time. And really, honestly, that's the thing that I want to do. I want to show people that there are other alternatives that are available to them. Do not give up. You are more than your diagnosis. You have the opportunity that you can go ahead and really rewrite things on how you want them to be. But you definitely have to have the right support system to be able to go ahead and do it. So if you've gotten to a situation where you're going to these different specialists and they're not able to help you, continue to find someone. Continue. Do not give up. I know that you want to give up. Trust me. I've just said I fired 3. Okay. So I'm like, if I fired 3, I can only imagine how many more. And that's honestly a common thing that I've heard from a lot of people when I talk to them that they've gone through. But also, continue to advocate for yourself, and that
absolutely
I'm here for you. I'm holding space for you. There's someone here that gets it and understands and wants to help you.
And it's a safe place.
Absolutely. Safe place. And it's confidential and judgment free. I don't judge anybody because trust me, I've been through some things. So there's no, so it's like I'm the last person, to say anything about that stuff. But it's like, I'm definitely here and I want to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Everybody, if you think somebody that could benefit from hearing this, like, share, follow, do whatever it is you want to do. If you are on the podcast and you're listening, share the link. It's there in the podcast. Share it away and change somebody's life. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on What Has Changed Your Life.